In a world where curiosity reigns supreme, one podcast dares to journey into the unknown, exploring the stories that shape our lives and the secrets that ignite our passions. They are the GenXperts.
Welcome to the GenXperts podcast. This is Derek Phelps, your host. I'm here today with my wife, Bridget Phelps, Dr. Derek Allen Clements, Miss Courtney Clements, Amanda Salazar Higgins, and Jonathan Higgins. We are the GenXperts because we lived this moment.
You said one of those wrong.
Which did I say?
Dr. Amanda Salazar
Oh my
Higgins.
gosh, am I embarrassed today? I will probably be beaten later.
I will kick him hard for you, Manor, just so you know.
Dr. Amanda Salazar Higgins. Well, folks, we are the GenXperts. We lived it, we survived it, and we have the t-shirt to prove it. Today's episode, we are discussing what it means to be Generation X. We know the definition, the textbook definition, what Generation X is, but today we are going to discuss what we believe are qualifiers to be Gen X. So I will open it up to the panel, and we shall discuss this.
We were the group raised by the baby boomers, and we raised millennials, and we picked on, which generation did we pick on?
Well, we picked on the millennials.
We picked on
Probably
millennials.
picked on other Gen Xers too, but that's beyond the point.
And we raised some of the, what is this most recent one? Gen
Z.
Zs. And then the Zennials.
Well, some of us were raised by silent generation.
True.
Yep.
We didn't have those older parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we certainly had growing up in my house, I had the parents who were the teenagers in the 1950s. So I was not hearing 60s and 70s music. What I was hearing was what they grew up on in the 40s and 50s.
Right. And when by the time when the 1950s rolled around, that was, they were about to get married, and they were about to get married and start their family. And so, yeah, they were definitely the older, more silent generation.
I thought the first thing I thought of was you're the last of the Cold War kids. Starting right afterwards. So we got my parents who were technically boomers, then us. So we saw it end, thank goodness. Of course, now it's kind of back, but that was cool. And the other thing I thought of is we were the ones to have the first experiences at home with not only video games, but eventually computers and then cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my students now who are all born after 9/11 what it was like when I was in my middle 20s and got a computer at home and finally got a cell phone for the first time.
Back in the 1900s, when we were
I
kids.
definitely call it last century when I talk to them. Last century when I was in your shoes, and they look at me like I'm ancient because I am.
Because we totally are.
Well, one pivotal thing for me would be something that happened when I was 8th grade. And I can remember watching the TV at yet another space shuttle launch to see this one actually explode.
Challenger, yes.
Challenger.
Yep.
And the realization that America's space race was not as dominant and perfect as they made it out to be.
And that brings up another thing. We are the space race generation because it starts technically in the 60s, that was for the textbook generations, but 65. So by the time we actually hit to the moon, so at the end there, then up to now. So
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Challenger explosion, it really rocks you a little bit too, because Kristen McAuliffe was involved with that, where you have a public school teacher who was going into space. So, I mean, this is a big thing for the public schools to sit there and watch. And then thinking about seeing that and thinking how just silent everyone was, our teachers not really knowing how to address the situation because they were in disbelief. And it's like, roll the TV card out of the room and let's try to learn mathematics for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think from a school counselor perspective, I've got to tell you that, boy, have we changed a lot since then. I don't think our school counselor even talked to us that day about anything. There was no, okay, we're all going to get together in the gym now and talk about it. Everybody okay? No, no, it was just, wow, that was really bad. And, we were upset, but we didn't fall apart, I know that I think the thing that bothered me most is that my GT teacher had applied. And so the only thing, I mean, I know it's going to sound terrible, but the thing that really bothered me the most is that it could have been him. And so I think that was the first time I had connected to something like that in such a abstract way, because, we're very concrete thinkers until we hit about that age, or at least for me. And that was my first big revelation that somebody that I know could have been in that. And so it was one of those big moments for me.
Well, and once when our generation gets into education as teachers, we had to deal with another shuttle explosion and then 9/11 as well in the bigger situation. So I turned my experience to ask them what the shuttle meant to my AP students in AP history, because I said, this was my experience. So in the question, so tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty interesting connection across our generation to theirs.
And too, I mean, we're talking about the last of the Cold War generation. We're probably one of the last generations that sat and watched Russia parade its might to the rest of the world, and living every day of your life with the idea of nuclear Armageddon in the back of it, even making movies based upon nuclear Armageddon.
And because of that, we probably had either parents or brothers or uncles around Vietnam as well. So, where they got that connection.
Yep.
Your dad.
My dad, yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad as well.
Yep.
Mine wasn't in Nam, but he was in the service at the time. So that is just deployed somewhere else. So,
Of course, we're the cable TV generation too. I mean, I
Yeah.
love my MTV.
Oh,
Right?
yes. Yeah, the rise of MTV.
But we also had that antenna still.
Yeah.
In case the cable was out, we still had that antenna.
It was
Still
that
has
it was
I
that
was
in
the
between.
now as a kid of the sticks, we had no cable, so it was just the antenna, which I had to go out and turn to Memphis. To get the Memphis stations whenever the wind blew the antenna.
We only got the 2 channels where I live. We had ABC, good old K8, and PBS. So I watched a lot of PBS growing up.
No, I did too. And as a result of that, that the thing, you only had like the 2 Memphis channels beyond what you had. So I don't understand that.
I mean, that's fancy.
Exactly. You were making me feel like a city person.
Man, you're living it up. And,
Well-
with cable, our world's really expanded because we're getting to see what people were, really like Hollywood stuff, but other side of the world stuff and people our own age, that when we're on the news, we were getting to see people our own age, what they were wearing, what they were doing with their hair, how they were talking, the kind of things they were reading, the kind of dances they were doing.
Oh, yeah, it influenced a lot of our day-to-day.
Oh, yeah. And previous generations just didn't really have that to the extent that Gen X had.
We were so amazingly marketed to that it's mind-boggling now to sit back and look at it, because we were marketed to so well through anything we took in visually. Especially you watch a Saturday morning cartoon. Well, I think it was Reagan who rolled back some of the red tape that kept them from advertising so much to children and let companies just advertise everything. Well, if you've got a cartoon, there obviously has to be a toy line and probably a cereal and no telling what else tied to that.
You also have to have the pajamas. You had to have the bedroom set.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, the lunchbox. No doubt.
Merchandising,
We were also known as latchkey kids,
yes.
and often coming home to an empty house because both parents were working. This fostered a sense of independence and self-reliance early on.
We were the kids that were told to go outside and play, and they didn't know where we were until the streetlights came on. Like, we've talked about it before. They had to put a reminder on. They had to put a reminder on TV. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Because they would just turn us loose. I mean, there's no telling what kind of crazy adventures that
For myself, I mean, I had a sister that was 8 years older than me, so she was in charge of watching me until I got up to a certain age. And of course, how well does a child 18-year-old watch a 12-year-old? Not that well.
Oh, I can top that. My parents left my 12-year-old brother in charge of, was it probably 5-year-old me?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And one night they came home, and of course, we grew up in the South, and guns are everywhere, and you're taught from before you know, it's like, do not touch the gun, do not mess with the gun is not a toy. But apparently he had fallen asleep and I got scared of something, and my parents walked in the door to meet with my dad's 45 on the couch next to me. Well, I knew he only shot strangers.
Yeah.
You know,
Identify yourself immediately.
Do you meet a stranger at a party?
no, everyone was safe.
Yes.
Well, my dad came in and I had been playing in their bedroom, and Dad walked into their bedroom and I had his handgun. I had it pointed at him, and he said, of course at the time it was loaded. It was in the drawer, but it was loaded. And so here I have a loaded gun. I'm 3 years old pointing it at my dad.
You win.
And said that Mom came in and like screamed, and he thought, oh no, this is how I die, so to speak. And but she ended up saying, okay, you need to give Daddy the gun now. Come on, let's go play or something, along those lines. And I handed it over, but oh my gosh, can you imagine? I think I climbed up the dresser drawers, like pulled them out and got up on the drawers to get it.
And I married you. Fantastic.
Lucky man.
Yeah.
Lucky man.
My dad drove trucks, so he wasn't home probably 2 days out of the week. My mother worked in a factory, and that sometimes meant overtime or working weekends. So I learned a lot about microwaving myself something to eat. And don't look at me like I know
You
I'm fancy.
had a microwave?
Yeah, we were high echelon people, upper middle class. What can I say?
Well, we got a microwave in the 80s too, so we're also the generation of the microwave.
To
Yeah.
be fair, we are the microwave generation.
Yeah. We went from
Probably
the
explains what's wrong with it.
the 45-minute to an hour TV dinner went to went to just minutes in the microwave.
A lot of delicious, quote unquote, delicious microwave meals out there. Oof.
We didn't have a microwave till we were much older.
Yeah.
But Dad worked during the day. We also had the farm. Mom worked nights. So who got to learn how to do the cooking? Me. I started cooking when I was 11.
I was going to want to bring that up as well. I have our job was we'd come in, do our homework, and if Mom wanted something started before they came home, she worked kind of beside our house at my grandfather's business. My dad worked in Jonesboro. So in the very beginning, it was simply just starting some things. But then as we got older, it was have it ready by the time they got home. So some of those people.
Yeah.
Most of those weren't complicated dishes, but
Yeah.
so that's kind of that independence thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the independence thing kind of go the other way, because one of the things that I saw looking at stuff about our generation is sometimes called the slacker generation.
Yeah.
So you had some other people who went completely the other way. They'd go home and do nothing. Just stare at video games, and not have chores.
Yeah.
Because I had chores I had to do as well as homework before we started.
Yeah, I was a
Browning the
slacker.
ground beef so you could be home at whatever time that's ready.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I was one of those that could have just been the slacker. My mom, after I got up a little bit older, she stopped working and she stayed at home. And then, she just took care of everything. And so it was a while before I learned how to cook and stand on my own 2 feet on a lot of things, because I didn't have to do it. I wanted to. I got to where I wanted to learn how to cook, and I wanted to be able to make things. And I wouldn't trade those memories for anything in the world now. But yeah, I was one of those that I didn't have a giant list of chores. I did my homework.
Right.
That was about it. I didn't have anything I had to do.
We're also considered the forgotten generation. We're pretty much the middle child. Nobody pays attention to the middle child. No one has expectations of the middle child. We just kind of were there.
No, I think that's because we took care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because going back to the latchkey thing that Jonathan mentioned, that's it again. I think we had to learn how to do all those little things, and then as a result of that, here's the job, go do it.
Well, and you see too,
Unless you're a slacker.
demographically, the boomer generation, there was more of a divorce rate, the breaking up of the nuclear family. And
Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah.
The movie really defined our generation.
Yeah. And you get a lot of the boomer generation wanting to focus more on themselves and their own careers and who they are. And kids, just raise yourselves. You'll be okay. Our parents, we survived. So it was kind of passed on there.
I would say more
we're not looking more at freedom, more women's rights. As women gained more rights and more freedom,
Oh, yeah.
they had the freedom to, split from that nuclear home.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you saw the mother, in a lot of cases, being the primary breadwinner in that situation. And, single mother homes, different situations. But I think it did become more predominant with our generation than it had generations before.
And my mother, she is a young boomer. She
Yeah.
is only 19 years older than me. So she's a young boomer. She was basically a latchkey kid as well.
Yeah.
But both of her parents worked,
Mhm.
worked in the post office, and her dad worked at, where we worked. But so she has a lot of the similar experiences that I have had. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of fortunate that I got a younger mother to entertain me.
Movies like Reality Bites and The Breakfast Club captured the essence of our generation's struggles and aspirations.
Did you watch Reality Bites?
Of course I did.
Yes.
I did all the research.
Well, and true. And of course, I think you, in another class, we had a conversation about John Hughes movies.
Yes.
Which I
Yeah.
really didn't watch them. Courtney's much more versed on those than I am. But we did watch a documentary, and I watched some of it on his impact. And I was like, well, yeah, because I remember all the names of the movies. I just didn't
Yeah.
see them.
Well, he really figured out, I think, with Hughes, he figured out that before that, it seemed like the teenage character in films was just a caricature of, oh, this is what a teenager is. This is what they do.
They were Susie and Bobby.
Yeah.
They were just the little kids next door that you saw come out, and they would wave at you. I mean,
Mhm.
they didn't
Father
have
knows best.
yeah. I mean, we're talking about the cleavers.
Well, the whole idea of a teenager is a relatively new concept anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. I tell my students that they look at me like I'm insane, but yes, you're true. 100%.
But it was well
They don't
captured
know
by
what to do
Hughes.
with that now. That's the problem.
We talked about being able to be influenced by other places around the world. Something it popped in my head whenever we brought that up. Punk rock in England, the way that they dressed, the spikes in the hair, the metal, the leather, they had like some seriously hardcore punk look, and I think that changed the way that a lot of people in our country dressed, because I don't know that the youth of our generation would have been as brazen if they didn't see other countries doing stuff like that. I think that that's one where there were people going, hey, I like that look. I'm going to do something extreme like that. Yeah,
Enough so that we had an ABC after school special the day my kid went punk.
Well, I was thinking, it's natural to swing extreme opposite. So we went from disco to punk. So
Yeah. Thank
but
goodness.
then punk, we get till now rock and some of those other genres. So the other thing is we really were, like many other generations before us, really defined, I think, by the music we listened to. But we had sources like MTV, which you got cable got.
I didn't have that until I
Friday
was
night-
older.
Friday night videos.
Friday night videos.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whenever I finally, it was like for my 16th birthday, we got the cable package. We had the basic, they had the first like channel 2 through 12, half of which was like the weather channel and local station, But my 16th birthday, we got the cable pack. First time I ever had MTV at the house, I was 16. And that was like the best present ever. I think I spent 24 hours in front of the TV just watching everything because MTV still had videos, at the time. But music, talking about how music influenced us, and we're talking about our technology, we are probably the only generation that went from, we had record players and 8-tracks and cassettes and CDs and,
The digital
MP3s.
era.
We are the only generation that actively listened to all of those things as they were coming through,
And had to rebuy them every time.
Yes.
time.
How many versions of Prince's Purple Rain do I have?
R.I.P.
Now, there are two important types of music we've left off, probably because none of us listen to them. And that would be grunge and hip hop.
I was a grunge girl.
You mean you didn't listen to it?
I listened to both.
I did. I listened to both.
I went from that preppy look with my little, which I love. I'm seeing it coming back where they've got like the little jackets, like the sport jackets for girls. And I went from that and rolling my sleeves up and tight rolling my jeans. I went to grunge. And I mean, Nirvana. I went hardcore into listening to Nirvana and Green Day. And I mean, not Green Day. What am I thinking? Pearl Jam. Oh my gosh. To everyone that hears this, I am so sorry. I called Pearl Jam Green Day. Please
Green
don't
jelly. That's what she meant.
please don't take away my GenX card.
Mint jelly?
But I mean, I went from preppy to grunge. I mean, I wore the plaid shirts.
So I saw a really cool quote the other day that called grunge to Bob Dylan. And I got to thinking about it, and it's just kind of spot on. You know, even looking at what Cobain was singing about, you could understand him most of the time. And then his death too, which is kind of interesting, and the impact on the generation as well.
I think what I like about us as Gen X, I think we can encompass several different genres. You can enjoy different genres.
Oh, yeah.
You know, not like our previous parent generation where, they just kind of stuck to, disco or,
They were country music listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Both types, country and western.
Yes, both types.
We were polyamorous.
Oh. We are also the generation that we have men who have perfected the dad joke. So
So good.
Guilty.
Come into my own.
terrible, just terrible.
But I mean, think about it. And honestly, in our kind of generation, especially in the 80s and 90s, country really it started first of all kind of a little bit of a shift in sound because you're getting the Garth Brooks, George Strait, and so it's really getting to be more of a. I mean, I know Bridget still refers to it as hee-haw music.
That is correct.
Which
I
is
do.
fully acceptable.
We watched Hee-Haw, but
Yeah.
we didn't listen to Hee-Haw on the radio type stuff.
I watched Hee Haw, but only because there was one TV, and I was not happy about it. Till I
We
got my
recorded
13
Hee Haw, so when Dad got home, he could watch it.
Oh, you and your fancy VCR.
There we go. Piece of tech.
The fact that we can record.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and try to catch our favorite songs, but also our favorite TV shows. So.
How many hours did we spend beside the radio with the cassette thing ready to record? We just had to wait for the favorite song to come on,
And the DJ has to talk over it.
Daggum it, every
Every time.
stinking time.
Now, when you listen to these songs 30 years later, you still hear C95 in your head.
I just want my Rick D's in the weekly top 40, daggum it.
It just caused me to have a thought. I actually called Memphis and requested Boston once, so Memphis station. It must have been Rock 103.
We actually talked a substitute teacher into, because you remember some of the fancy public schools, we had the cable inside the classroom with the big TV mounted in the corner. We talked her into putting it over on MTV so we could watch the new Snoop Dogg video.
Going to hip hop though.
Yeah.
You had NWA, you had Enemy, but you also had Fat Boys, so you had all sorts of.
There was a lot of variety.
people all over the place.
Yeah.
Run DMC with Aerosmith. That was
Now that-
really
That was
God.
amazing.
a lot of mainstream kids to listen to some rap for the first time. I think.
The rise of hair bands. All that hair.
And now we're
hair
seeing them as they're
spray.
old now, and they're
Yeah.
contours and stuff.
And they're still wearing those bandanas because they didn't want us to see their bald.
Yeah, just so they have the hair.
Was it someone had a meme the other day that a lot of the old hair band lead singers are now looking like the Golden Girls in their later years?
They do. Except for Keith Richards. He just always looks the same.
Keith Richards is eternal.
I think he's embalmed and we just don't know it.
Yeah. It'll come out later that Keith Richards was like a god that walked amongst us and we didn't know.
Yeah, I'm going to bet no on that
Yeah.
one. Mm-hmm.
He's Loki and we just don't know it. But that's the thing I say too about, with the technology of recording on VHS or beta in the beginning, if you were lucky enough to have beta.
VHS war.
Yes. It was before the HD, DVD, and Blu-ray wars later on. But
I've so many wars. This is
say the common theme between my parents, the boomer generation, and like the probably, late millennials and Gen Z is they both don't know how to program a VCR really well. They know nothing about analog technology at that point. But
They don't know that every time the power would blink, you'd have to go through the house and redo the clock on the stove. And then later, when we had our fancy microwaves, they had clocks. And the VCR would blink, and that would screw everything up, and you'd have to reprogram the whole thing all over again. They have no idea.
to play your Atari, you have to put it on channel 2. Getting kicked off the internet if the phone rang. We experienced that later in life.
And just the wonderful sound of it.
Yeah, the dial-up modem sound. Not many know that one. Or you've got mail.
That's another one. I was kind of interested in everybody's story because I know mine, but clearly, when was the first time you actually used a computer in the sense that we know them like today? As in like a keyboard, a terminal, and with a CPU type setup on the side, perhaps?
Third grade.
Third grade.
Third grade. I was in GT, and they took us over to the high school to get on the school's first Apple II computers.
An Apple II. Okay.
Yeah, and there was no mouse, there was no Windows yet. Everything was we had to type it all in across the front of the board, which was a chalkboard with actual chalk. They would write, all the code that we'd have to type in to get stuff to run. And of course, if you miss any little thing, it's not going to work right. It's going to throw up that stupid,
How did
error.
you save files?
Okay, so we did have, of course, we started out with the giant floppy disk. I mean, the big floppy disks. And we had to bring money so we could, if we wanted to buy a second one or whatever, the school provided us with one that would store a little bit.
Mine was a little different because it was before the floppy disk, but I was actually using. I was tapped to take because we got a grant to get a couple computers in the back, basic programming class, and I think you guys did the same. But we had to record ours on cassette tapes.
Oh, well.
So we had to run from your class as fast as you could go into the math room in the back because it was the math guy who taught it, and you would download what you're working on the day before, and they were relatively simple things. Have the prompt say, give me a number and I'll tell you the square root, but you had to program it to do it. But it would take so long to save it as well that you were sitting there watching as you're getting closer to the bell, frantically trying to coax your tape to go faster. And unfortunately it did. And sometimes you're a little late to the next class.
Yeah.
But all you had to do is say, save me my program, and they would go. Then you sit down. So that was mine. So that would have been in the spring of '89. That's just when I graduated.
Probably another reason why we also got labeled the Oregon Trail generation.
Yes. I remember whenever we got fancy enough for that. I mean, the first ones that we did was just literally being able to make like a dot appear on the screen and move to different places. It got really exciting whenever we were able to design a car and run it through a wind tunnel. And I know that sounds fancy.
Where did you go to school at?
Pocahontas.
Ooh.
No.
We were surrounded by fields where I went to school.
Well, we're surrounded by mosquitoes, that come from fields. But
Ours are rice. I challenge that.
Yeah, I do believe at the time you definitely had more rice fields than we did up here. But it was, I don't know. I mean, it was a little bit better than 8-bit, but not much, It was interesting.
Keying all that programming to see a little 5-6 circle multicolor caterpillar crawl across the screen.
Oh, man. When they got to be multicolor. I mean, because originally you
Yeah,
either had green
Everything was green.
or brown. You had the amber brown on some of them, depending on what model you had. There was amber brown color.
I have to confess, I've never actually played Oregon Trail. Our school didn't have it. I went to a very, very small, poor school.
We all know
Didn't
where
have
she
it.
went to school at.
Corning. I mean, my brain just fell apart. Did you also shake your head like you've never played Oregon Trail?
I was already out of high school by the time it came along.
Jonathan, have you been on that Oregon Trail?
No, I haven't been on Oregon Trail.
We are the masters of Oregon Trail, Bridget.
I have
No
made
one can
it all
stop
the
us.
way without dying from dysentery.
That's wonderful.
I've been snake bit and still lived.
There's a snake
So-
in my boot.
Oh my gosh, for real, y'all. We need to just like hook it up to the big TV in the living
Oh,
room.
I'm sure you could. I'm sure my phone has more, memory and capability than the first computers NASA had. So I'm pretty sure we could find Oregon Trail pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I've got it saved on
there's
my
things out
computer
there.
at work.
I saw a T-shirt the other day that had died of dysentery on the symbol of the little wagon.
And it's kind of funny too, to talk about, you just brought up t-shirt. I see students in high school all the time wearing, like, someone had on a Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt the other day, and I asked them what their favorite song was. I don't know, I just like the look of the shirt. Well, what's your favorite Nirvana song? I don't know. I just like the shirt.
I mean, I was a huge fan of the Doors in the '90s, so I mean, it's cyclical.
Yeah, but I don't like that. Let me sit you children down and tell you what it was like in the 1900s.
Sometimes when it's still, I can still hear the sound of Super Mario Brothers.
One of the greatest scores ever written.
Whenever we were able to change our ringtones on cell phones,
Yes.
I do remember having a Mario Brothers sound, like whenever we were falling into the pit and dying. I had that sound on my phone when my ex-husband would call, and so it was appropriate. Yeah.
So when did we get? I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
I used to have a ringtone of the TARDIS arriving, but I was told by my wife that if she missed him showing up because of my ringtone, I was going to be in trouble. So then I used a modem dial-up sound.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I was afraid that if I would
Fair.
just be, oh, it's just off its phone. It's not the actual TARDIS. I would be very
That
angry.
would be really
Yes.
disappointing.
The doctor just came and went, and you never knew.
I know.
That
That's why he got rid of it. Thank you, babe.
Sure.
that was a wonderful sacrifice you made. That's true
Yeah.
love.
For the betterment of the entire world.
We never know when the doctor's going to show up.
You're going to ask Derek, well, what everybody, I guess, whose first cell phone experience?
Yes.
whatever.
Oh, yes. Definitely. When did you get up with the cell phone?
My first experience was 1993. My dad had a bag phone.
Oh, man.
Ooh, bag
On
phone.
TV, I remember them on like Miami Vice, but they were huge. Almost
Yeah.
looked like the radios from Vietnam. that they
Yeah.
carried around.
Carrying
But usually
like
in
a
the
brick.
car.
Yeah.
A brick with an antenna.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dad had a bag phone that he kept, he took on the road when he drove truck because it was better than finding a phone booth anywhere. But when I was, borrowed his truck to go cruise town, it was locked, but I'd still pick it up and like act like I was talking on the phone to look real cool to everybody. Oh yeah, I'm talking on the phone inside this truck. How's it going?
Sure you aren't calling for backup.
Yeah. Dialing up NASA.
Well,
How about you, Bridget?
My first cell phone was when you and I were dating and we got cell phones together.
Those Nokia
Nokia.
bricks.
Those
Last
suckers are
forever.
probably still working fine in a landfill somewhere. Yeah. And, we thought it was super fancy when we could pop the front off of it and put a new cover on. I mean, that was uptown living right there.
Go to a fair and people be selling the Nokia covers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were pretty awesome at the time. And now I'm thinking all the things that this phone does, and some of those things I wish I could just get rid of and go back to the Nokia. It was just phone, dadgummit.
Yeah.
It was just a phone.
Anyone
Well,
else?
no, 1995 was a big year for me because that was the year I bought a computer to have at home so I could type my lectures and my tests. And then the same year I bought a cell phone because that actually the year I moved away from the house to work down in Helena. It's about an hour, 45-minute drive away. So that way, and I traveled a lot at that point in time.
Yeah.
On the weekend, so I would always could tell my folks where I was. But 95, and I'm thinking about, wow, here next year's an anniversary year for both of those.
Yeah.
One thing I honestly don't remember when I got my first cell phone that was just mine. Again, I'm like Big D over here with the bag phone. And I very much remember one time I had gone to Fayetteville with whoever it was I was dating at the time, I guess. And we were coming back across. We didn't do the down in Little Rock and up. We came across the top. And we were up in the hills, and I was trying to call my mom and dad because, they didn't have cell phones either at the time of my parents. And I ended up talking to some guy in Louisiana because we were up in the hills. And so the signal just got bounced funny and instead of getting connected to my parents' side. was talking to some guy in Louisiana for a while. And we're still friends to this day.
That's-
Knowing me, that would be the case. But oddly, it was not.
Never heard from him.
Never heard from him again.
That's where the true fascination with New Orleans started.
Probably starting, you made me think about it because I also ended up in some very rural places. So I actually had an external antenna that I could put on the top of my truck. I had to pull over and put it up and plug it to my phone to get a bar. So I forgot about that. Now kids are, usually they don't have any trouble navigating.
Yeah.
Man, what about your first phone?
Well, I don't know if you guys remember, my brother and his wife opened up a cell phone store here back.
That's where we
Yeah.
got ours at. Yep.
20-something years ago, and then that's where I got my first cell phone, and I still have that same phone number to this day. I don't know many people who
Wow.
can actually say that.
I did too. I had it changed.
Yes, it's. I mean, people just change their phone numbers all the time, but still the same one. But yeah, my first one I think was like a Sony Ericsson, and it lit up.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just black and white or whatever. It actually had like a backlight LED or something. Those fancy. Played a lot of Snake on there.
Oh, heck yeah.
What a great phone.
Minesweeper.
What'd you get your first cell phone? Do you remember?
I'm not really sure. I know that I had it before we got married, which definitely pre-2005, 2007 time period. I think it might have been in the late 90s or early aughts. But I can't pin it down to a year. Sorry.
Did your dad had a lot of cool things. Did he have a bank phone or anything?
I don't think he had a cell phone until everybody else had it. He did have a computer. They had an Apple IIe in the office and some early IBM machines. But I can't remember my dad ever having a cell phone until the smartphones came out.
My dad is still not good with the smartphone. Dad is 88 and he has seen so many changes over his lifetime. And I love to talk with him about, he went from, they didn't have a phone to where you could go to the store down the road or whatever and get on the party line and have them make a call for you or, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. The operator had to connect or call. Then party lines in our neighborhood, even when I was little. And
You need to define party line for listeners.
Oh, yes, I forget. Not everybody is familiar with party line. So it sounds like fun, but it was not.
It's really not a party.
So a party line, you would be able to pick up your phone, and if anyone in your neighborhood that was on the same line as you, if they were on the phone, then you could hear their conversation, and you couldn't get a call, and you couldn't make a call. And so you had to really watch what you'd say because you never knew if the nosy neighbor was listening to what you were saying to your friend because she was going to tell your mom. So you had to watch what you were saying.
Or heaven forbid, they didn't hang their phone up right.
Yeah.
Because the phone was off the hook.
Oh, yeah. Eventually we got that, but that sound came along because people would have their phone off the hook for hours and not realize the phone was just off the hook.
That kind of like on Little House on the Prairie when they had got the phone over there that, what's their face, was listening into everybody's phone conversations.
Harriet Nelson.
Yeah.
Yep. Listening to everybody's conversations.
Olsen.
Olsen, there you go.
Yeah.
Harriet Nelson is Ozzie and Harriet.
There we go.
There we go. But
Party line. Not a party.
no, not a party at all.
Well, if another thing that I think about when we're talking about specifically our childhoods is the development of the sequel franchise films.
Mm-hmm.
That's another podcast,
Is
isn't
it?
it?
Yes, that is another
Whole
podcast.
other
Yes.
episode.
So we'll thank that.
Okay, so everyone, just think for just a minute. What does Generation X mean to you? 3 sentences or less.
3 sentences or less.
3 sentences or less. What does Generation X mean to you?
Born in the Cold War, solid end.
That is a historian answer.
Well, guess what I do for a living, listeners?
Dr.
teach.
Derek Allen Clements, historian.
But because I said it, because I was born at Fort Benning, Georgia, when Dad was in the service. So for me, it was being very aware of that. So that's more than 3 sentences. I'm done.
Courtney, he used your sentences. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
Your time is up.
All right. Anybody?
false weapons of mass destruction, planes. That's about all of it.
No, it's
I would say, being the invisible generation, because we were taught as kids, children should be seen and not heard. And so I feel like that maybe has carried over definitely in my life.
See, I feel like we're a generation with an attitude.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, mine is informed a lot by what I see on Facebook and memes and whatnot. But we were 30 by the time we were 12, and now that we're 50, we're still 30.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I like that.
The
Yeah.
FAFO generation.
What?
The FAFO generation.
What in the world?
F around and find out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? I think that is a really good summary of our generation. We were like, okay, fine. You want me to be quiet? I'll be quiet. Whatever. Whatever is probably one of the most
Whatever, yes.
strong words that I can use to describe whatever
Yeah.
for our whole generation. Just
The
whatever.
generation that's really glad that Pixar it didn't happen is really true.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
Pick
None of
sides.
us would
None of
have
it happens.
jobs.
People living in the moment.
Yeah. No, but I mean, for really,
Really, dude.
for me, I think it was just a crazy fast evolution of clothes and music and just like society in general and breaking norms and rise of technology. All of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
thinking everything you were saying is tech driven.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought was we went from analog to digital and beyond quick. We saw with movies we'd seen the end of like Panavision and started moving into digital and 4K, and now we're going beyond that. The old school 3D movies like Jaws 3D, and now you're seeing 3D digitally in front of you in IMAX
All of
theaters.
our Disney films are no longer hand drawn; they're all
Yeah.
digitally
Yeah.
made.
And we did at least live in the era where, the FBI agents in ET had guns and they said the word terrorist and it was okay.
They did. It was before everything. Movies, the way that, and this probably needs to be a whole nother episode, but the way that movies are edited and then versus now,
Yeah.
and what's acceptable for kids to watch then versus now is just so, it's insanely different. I mean, the way that the ratings and stuff work. So yeah, I think future podcasts, we
think
should
it-
definitely
yeah.
talk about the
I
change.
think
and
it
what's
started with us
acceptable.
too.
Yeah.
You think of the explicit lyrics albums.
We're gonna get to
That's a
that.
whole other
Yeah.
episode right there, too.
Right.
I have opinions.
Well, I guess we will wrap this one up. Thanks for tuning in. This is the GenXperts podcast. We will be back with you at another time. Like and subscribe. Can't wait to hear from you.